Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. So it's been a little while. I feel like I start off every video that way, but it's kind of the truth. It has been a while. I've been busy doing some some wedding film edits, as well as some just photography stills edits, as well as just kind of personal stuff that's come up in the last few weeks. Mostly all good stuff. Things have been good, just been busy, and I haven't really had time to make YouTube videos. So here I am, putting one out. Hopefully moving forward the next couple weeks, I'll have more time to put out some more content, hopefully related to the A7 III, as well as some other things I've got in the works. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into today's topic. And as you've probably guessed from the thumbnail, it's about my switch from Canon to Sony. So yeah, so basically in a nutshell, I decided to switch over to Sony. Now I still have my Canon 5D III. If you've ever seen any of my videos, you probably know I've been using the 5D III for quite some time, and it's definitely been my go-to camera. And so yeah, up until recently, I planned on buying a 5D IV as a second camera and like relegating my 5D III to my backup. But really what it's come down to lately is I've been getting more into video and doing wedding films, and I needed a better video camera, and the 5D III wasn't cutting it. So yeah, I was planning on picking up a 5D IV. That was a logical choice. And then the Sony A7 III came out, and Sony made it really hard for me to justify spending more money on a camera that provided fewer features. So to give you some more context, I mean, when I picked up my 5D III originally, the Sony A9 hadn't even come out yet. And at the time, having two memory cards was a big deal for me for doing weddings and other corporate stuff where I wanted that extra backup, that redundancy. So I picked up the 5D III, and then the Sony A9 came out, and it's a great camera, very cool, but it's also super expensive. I could buy like three or four 5D Mark IIIs for the same price as an A9. So that was never really an option for me. But then all along the way, I was always a little jealous of some of my buddies who had the Sonys and some of the features that they had, but whatever, I was still comfortable with sticking with Canon. The A7R III came out, and that piqued my interest a little bit. I thought about maybe switching then, but I could still justify staying with Canon because the 5D Mark IV refurbished was still a few $100s cheaper. So, whatever, plan stayed on course just to pick up a 5D Mark IV eventually. I was getting pretty close to pulling the trigger on buying the 5D IV, but then yeah, the A7 III came out, and man, did Sony just pack this thing full of features. And they just made it really hard, like I said, for me to justify spending the money on a 5D IV. So before I spent my money on the A7 III though, I ended up renting one. I had it for about a week. I used it to film a wedding, I used it to photograph a wedding, and I used it just to go run around and just play around with it, get used to it, get a good feel for it, and see if it would be a camera that would work well for me, because I did have some apprehension of switching from Sony over to Canon, primarily because I knew the 5D IV would have the dual pixel AF, as well as obviously Canon's colors, which everybody always raves about. And so that was kind of the two main issues that I was concerned about, so I decided to go ahead and rent the camera and see if there were issues for me. Now, to tell you, to be perfectly honest, after having that camera on rents for a week, honestly, the autofocus, okay, was it as good as my 77D in the dual pixel AF? No, but it was close enough for what I do. It's still really, really good. It wasn't as good as the dual pixel AF, but it was close enough for me. And then the same thing with the color. Honestly, the colors on this camera look fine to me. I don't know if they've changed the color science with the A7 III compared to other Sonys, but I can pull just a standard picture profile off this camera, and for YouTube videos, it looks totally fine. I don't have to edit it if I don't want to. But if I do want to have more control, more dynamic range, yeah, I can use one of the S-Logs or one of the other picture profiles that are flatter, and then I can color grade all I want on that. But honestly, yeah, the colors out of this camera on a standard picture profile looked fine enough for me for doing general YouTube stuff, so I was not too concerned about it. And so basically those two main issues that I had, my biggest concerns from switching to Canon to Sony, were pretty much negligible. They weren't really issues at all after I had that camera for a week. So after I returned that camera off of rent, I decided to go ahead and just buy the camera. So I went down to my local shop, and luckily enough, they had one left in stock, so I bought it. And it's been my go-to camera for a little over a month now. To be honest, I haven't touched my 5D III since, and I've been loving this thing. I've been mostly using it with adapted lenses, using a Sigma MC11 adapter, my Canon lenses, and it's been great. I mean, honestly, for a couple weddings now that I've photographed, I haven't had any issues. It's worked fine. And yeah, just in general, I've been thoroughly enjoying this camera, and I'm definitely glad I made the switch and I bought this guy. Now let's go ahead and jump into some more specific reasons over why I went with the A7 III. So just a couple quick ones. I mean, one thing was not having, well, the Sony a7 III, it's got the 120 frames per second at 1080p. Now, granted, a lot of people are overdoing the 120p craze right now. You see 120 super slow-mo in pretty much every YouTube video. And even though I don't use it very much, really at all, it's still nice to have that option to have the 120p at full HD. It's a little ridiculous that the 5D4's only got, 120 frames per second at 720. I mean, this is not, it's like 2012 or something. So that's a little ridiculous to me. So the fact that this thing has full HD at 120p, even though I don't use it very often, it's nice to have the option to if I do want to use it. Another big selling point for me was having the focus peaking. I know that Canon doesn't have it and the Sony does, and for me that's a big one. Like, especially when you're doing wedding films and oftentimes you're doing manual focus, being able to use those, use that focus peaking to make sure that your focus is on point, that's a huge time saver, it's a huge benefit, and it's something that I can't believe Canon doesn't have, but I knew the Sony did, and that was a huge selling point for me as well. Another big one was the EVF. I've seen a lot of my buddies with the Sonys, and I've always been jealous of them with the EVF. It just makes so much sense. I mean, why bother chimping? It just, if you can have the exposure right there in the viewfinder or the back of the LCD and be able to see and know that, what you see is what you get, like, that just makes so much sense. You lose much fewer frames because your exposure is off. To me, it's just an EVF is a no-brainer. I love it, and I've been using it on this camera for the last month, and like, I can't imagine going back to an optical viewfinder. Like, the EVF, I just love it. Now, a couple stills related issues or features on the a7 III that I really wanted was obviously the IAF. I do a lot of portraits, and for me, having the IAF to track the eye from edge to edge, that's huge. It saves me a ton of time. I don't have to focus and recompose. So yeah, having the IAF, that was a huge one. And then along the same lines as that, I kind of touched on it briefly, is the edge-to-edge focusing points. The Canon 5D3 and the 5D4, they're all grouped towards the center. And so when you're doing portraits, even just for very standard compositions, you always end up having to focus and recompose. And when you do that, you're shifting that plane of focus away from the eye, and it just drives me crazy when you get the images back in your computer and the eye is just a little bit out of focus. And where with this a7 III, let me tell you, like, I can't believe how sharp the eyes have been on my portraits with this camera. Absolutely blowing my 5D3 out of the water, and it doesn't have that many more megapixels, but when you're not shifting that plane of focus, it makes a huge difference. So those are two big benefits right there with the a7 III that I was really interested in having, and I've been loving them. Another big one for me is just the ability to customize the camera. Again, that was another thing that I was always just a little bit jealous of from other people who had the Sonys. I think it's great that you can customize these cameras just to some ridiculous degree. I feel like there's no two Sony cameras that are exactly the same. And to me, it just makes my life easier. It decreases the amount of time I spend fiddling with the technology to get the image that I want. So to be able to customize, the camera based on the mode that you're in, to me, it just makes so much sense, and I've been loving how much I can customize this thing, and I'm still learning about ways I can take advantage of that. And then kind of the last big point, and I kind of touched on it earlier, is just the final reason why I went with the Sony a7 III over the 5D4 was just simply value. The amount of stuff that you're getting packed into this camera for $2,000 is just ridiculous. And Sony just made it really hard for me to justify spending more money on a camera that will give me less options. And Sony's been established enough now, they've been around long enough to be established, and like, they're good solid cameras. They're gonna get you the images that you want. They're gonna get you good quality professional results, and there really was just no reason not to go with the a7 III over the 5D4 in my opinion. But yeah, that was kind of the last main one. The last main point that I had was just the value of it. I just could not deny the value of the a7 III compared to the 5D4. All right, so that's really kind of the main issues. That's kind of the main points. That was what kind of drove me from Canon over to Sony. Now, these are my reasons why I switched. I'm not saying that they're valid reasons. I'm not saying that they're your reasons. I'm not saying that you should go out and buy this camera because of those reasons. I'm not even saying they're legitimate reasons, but they are my reasons. You can disagree with them if you want, whatever. I've been loving this camera, and I don't regret my purchase, and I'm looking forward to using this thing pretty heavily in the weeks and months and years to come. All right, guys, so that's it for this video. I just kind of wanted to briefly talk about my reasons for switching over from Canon over to Sony, why I went with the a7 III over the 5D4, and yeah, I've been enjoying the camera, and I feel like I've been learning a lot with it over the last month. So yeah, if you found the video useful, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos from me about the A7 III or about my switch from Canon over to Sony, or just other things in general, tutorials and all that good stuff, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And then if you've got questions about the A7 III, or maybe you've got questions about switching from Canon to Sony and using adapted glass or stills or video or whatever else, if you've got any of those questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. I'll try to get to them as best as I can. And yeah, other than that, guys, that's going to be it for this video. So until next time, take care, stay safe, keep shooting, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.